there's a song on Spotify that is the song length, but there's no audio at all. It's just silent.
Interesting. Have a lot of people listen to it?
Yeah, for the meme. They tried to remove it, but people were like, "It's art," so they didn't take it down.
Art.
Don't put this in the podcast.
Yeah,
we talk about interesting things here on the Dungeon Crawl, not silent songs that caused, I think it was a lawsuit.
Really?
Almost. There's something like that. I would look it up right now if we didn't have other things to talk about. But
learn, man.
Google on the there somewhere.
News segment.
This is a little early for that. We gotta keep that in the middle,
right.
man. This whole podcast is a news segment. If you're listening to us and we're not your sole news source for literally everything that's going on in the world right now, what are you doing?
You're technically
You listen to CNN or Fox? No. Dungeon Crawl. He's Brian.
He's Braxton.
And this is that podcast, the Dungeon Crawl that I mentioned just now.
Right?
Welcome this week to a fun cold start, I suppose. But yeah, we're the best news source in the world right now for all that's going on. We cover absolutely nothing of importance unless you have the time for a hobby like this, which is, I love it. I'm not knocking it. It's a great time. Which speaking of this as a hobby though, there was a fun interview I had this week. And for reference, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this really, but I basically do interviews for a living for various jobs. And in this case, I was doing an interview for some sort of video producer, video director, direct production dude. I've been super excited to work on it. It is really cool. You'd probably love it. Kenneth would probably love it, our good friend who's been on the podcast before.
Name drop.
So for this role, I found somebody who's been on a lot of projects before they applied. I was like, dang, this person's experienced. And I was getting nervous for that. This interview was set on accident on my part on my day off, which was Friday. I was supposed to be out of office. And then I go, I scheduled 3 interviews. So I was kind of out of office. Great time. It was not the most fun.
Yeah, this is a fun way to spend your day off.
It wasn't too bad. I just did the interviews, knocked them out, and then did nothing the rest of the day. So I sit down, do the first interview, guy's great. Do a second interview, this guy has less experience. Third interview, and I'm like, okay, I almost canceled it. The camera turns on immediately. I see the person, and then there's this red thing in the background, and it's book-shaped. And do you remember when I was talking about that freaking dragon and that fighter on that cover of the D&D book?
I do.
Do you remember that? But what was the book again?
That's like like the D&D book, right? You're the Player's Handbook.
Yeah, it's Player's Handbook. She just had the Player's Handbook sitting like on a pedestal on the top of her bookshelf, and I go, hold on. Well, first I was like, oh, hello, blah, blah, blah. Thank you so much for joining me today. And this, okay, I can't continue. What is that? Is that Player's Handbook? She goes, yeah. And she looks like, granted, she's a film person, so she's like casual.
This is before your interview, right?
This is before we conducted the interview.
Nice.
It was like casual, cool, and I look and I just go, that's D&D, right? And she goes, yeah. And I said, okay, we're gonna have to talk about that after the interview. And she starts cracking up. And then I'm like, okay, thanks for joining. Like today you're here for the blah, 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 video producer. We'll talk about, ask you questions. Here's this, here's my company, intro stuff. Then I go, wait a minute. And this is like 2 minutes later. Is that a Secret Labs chair?
Oh no.
And I go, just looking at her, she goes, yeah. I said, I literally just ordered one of those. She goes, and leans forward, and she goes, it's really comfortable. And I'm like, dude, are you me? And then we kept talking. The interview went great. She's perfect fit for the role. I'm hoping to submit her soon. And then
did you suggest to listen to the Dungeon Crawl podcast?
So depending on what happens, this person may get disconnected, right? But we'll see what goes on, because she's done a lot of stuff. So she also does podcast stuff. She never told me what her thing was. We didn't get connected on that, but she's like, yeah, my whole room's soundproof. And this was after we talked. She said her whole room is soundproofed, and she showed me around, and she has a bunch of figurines and whatnot.
Holy
and
cow,
then
who is this person?
A really cool person that lives in California who works in film stuff. I'm sure there's a lot, but I just happened to meet this one. And then she mentioned that she does this live action role play thing where she goes to a freaking castle I won't mention it specifically because she wanted to keep it on the down low. But she goes to a castle in a country that is not in the U.S.
Oh my god!
Live action role plays there,
like often.
And she invited me.
What?
Yeah, it happens once a year. And she said, if you have a friend you want to go with, I was like, I mean, I probably.
Can you imagine if we recorded a podcast in a castle,
dude? Podcastle. But she was really freaking cool. She goes, you got to tell me your podcast name. So I sent her the information and we're going to keep chatting about some stuff. So that was really fun.
Holy moly.
You know what they say, Ryan?
I don't know. I'm at a loss for words for what I just heard.
So, yeah, I mean, you got to take every situation. You got to look at it and you got to find the beauty, you know, in everything. Uh-huh. You know what they say?
No.
Now you got me nervous. Just like the proverbial they, everyone.
Okay, the collective
says this thing. Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna rip the Band-Aid. The beauty's in the eye of the beholder, Ryan. I know. You didn't give me the best setup there, okay?
I know. I was trying to kill it.
I wanted to cut to the chase. Not a good improv partner, man. If you're gonna go with me to this live action role play thing in a castle that's not in the U.S.
Okay, let's try it again.
No, we're done. It's out there. It's in the
I can promise I can do better if I got to get to this castle, man.
We got to proceed. We got important things to talk about. We have the monster to talk about.
This is the D&D monster. Yeah,
this is the guy. Have you seen him? Look at him.
Yeah, it was released in 1975, man.
Really?
Yeah, this is this was in the first Greyhawk supplement. That was the first supplement for D&D in 1975.
Dang.
And this is the unique thing about this guy, that he's not from mythology or anything. This is just
really. So they just created him?
Yeah. So the story goes, as far as I'm aware, this came straight out of the mind of Gary Gygax, the guy that made D&D. His group of players kind of created this. I think it might have been a specific player, but it was at least birthed out of his original one of his D&D groups.
You got to think there's something wrong with these people if they can come up with this. Huh?
Yeah, that's insane. And think how much impact this one monster had on pop culture everywhere. This thing has been in so much.
Yeah, but you look that up, and we do research a little bit before these things, and you're like beholders in pop culture, and then you get more advanced than that. You just can't find anything.
Well, I mean, there are games that have this creature in it. There are shows that have been made that have Big Trouble in Little China.
Stranger Things has had one.
They haven't yet, actually, but I'm sure that'll be like the big bad will be a beholder. Actually, I think their big bad's still just called a mind flayer. Who knows? But there's a Big Trouble in Little China has a beholder in it. I mean, there's all sorts of movies that have
my favorite things. Game? Or at least one of them.
Skyrim.
Okay. You may have heard I was playing Skyrim VR a few weeks ago, but I caved and I started playing Skyrim Special Edition again after modding it.
You did not.
I did.
You just downloaded the thing that it modded for you, correct?
This is correct.
Okay, all right.
Shout out to Webjack.
Yeah,
it is better. But there are no beholders in Skyrim, which is quite weird. I'm sure there's
mods for it.
Maybe.
You don't think so?
Maybe. Skyrim. It's tough because mods in Skyrim rework assets. There's very few that add things like a beholder. Skyrim and Bethesda love to reuse assets. So if they make a dragon and they code that thing, they're gonna rip the Hellbird or whatever that helicopter thing is in Fallout 4 that the Brotherhood of Steel uses. Those and the dragon have the same AI.
But there is a Far Realm ish kind of place in the Elder Scrolls.
That's the outlier. That's a good DLC. They do kind of add a few things.
Yeah,
but they're not beholders.
The beholders, though, are from the Far Realm. I don't know if you knew that they are birthed out of the realm of insanity that is the Far Realm.
I mean, yeah, Gary Gygax's mind is the Far Realms.
Yeah, there's some crazy stuff.
What you can glean from this story here by connecting the dots that Gary Gygax's abyss-like mind, if you stare into it, you go into the Far Realms.
I mean, to create something like not even just, I think they made mind flayers too. We've yet to do a podcast on that, but we should at some point.
We need to do a whole podcast on why Gary Gygax is the creator of the Far Realms.
The birthing of
it's his mind.
D&D.
That's all it is. But I mean, if you don't know what a beholder is, you've either been living under a rock or one's got you mind controlled. If they can do that, I don't know about their abilities. I've only played against one.
It's on the cover of the monster manual.
Yeah, it's there. If you've seen a big eyeball guy with a maw gaping, and lots of teeth, and
there's 10
eye stalks.
Eye stalks.
Is it 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. You are correct.
Well, so
can
each
these
beholder
be considered squids?
I don't think so.
No?
Each beholder is technically unique, but there are features that they tend to follow, which is the one large eye and the 10 small eye stalks with a large gaping maw.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, there's more than just the typical type of beholder.
Oh yeah.
So my experience with these guys, Dragon's Dogma, I've mentioned it before. Lovely game, and
cute.
Dragon's Dogma: Dark Arisen. So in this game, there is a beholder. And when you fight it, it does things like blind you, shoot fireballs,
sure,
curse you.
Sounds about right.
And eat you, I think. And it can throw you. That's about it. But they're strong, and they have resistance to basically weapons and everything until you can poke them in the eye somehow and get through their defenses.
Looks like it has more than 10 eye stalks, too, which is interesting.
In Dragon's Dogma,
kind of a variation, yeah.
It's got like infinite
eye
eye stalks.
It's very creepy looking.
Kind of a spoiler, but that's there. That's my experience with it. And they're fun. They're hard. I've died to it many times. I am not too keen to experience the same thing in Dungeons and Dragons,
so
but thinking about Ryan.
Fought one.
No, you've got one in your world somewhere, and I just know it.
I've got a couple, yeah. You guys almost found one.
What?
Yeah, you almost found one. But
what?
You didn't. No, I'm not saying
No, hold on.
No.
Go back.
This is not the podcast where we interrogate Ryan.
You can't just do that.
It's there.
When?
I don't know.
When? I don't know. We can't. We just teleported out of a place, everybody. And the place that we just left that we can't get back is probably what he's talking about now. So I am upset, but let us get back to the content so we can teach people about these beholders, and I will sulk in my corner.
So there's a lot of different types. We're going to get into those later, though. The specific beholder is each beholder that you see is unique to itself. Its colorations, its skin colorings, its eye, where it's located, how big, how small, how many teeth it's got, etc. Besides what I mentioned earlier that they all have to have. The reason this is
special.
Because, they're all special snowflakes because they can warp reality around them with their own thought, and the way they're thinking changes how they look. Do
these guys like have a? Is it their ideal shape that they have taken, or it's just how their thoughts are?
And that's a very interesting. What's the first
beholder beauty show?
Yeah, right. What is the first beholder? Who knows? Right. No one really knows where they come from. There must be, right? So, all right. So before we go any farther, I have to say how they reproduce. How does another beholder come into being? When the beholders are sleeping, they do keep their eye stalks open. The small eye does close. Oh, sorry, the big eye closes, but their extra eye stalks, are looking around. And they dream. They dream a lot. They like dreaming. And during their sleeps, their dreams that they have can change and warp the universe around them. If they dream about themselves, they will literally create a copy of themselves next to each other, and they will fight. More or less. They don't have to because it spawns it within a mile of themselves, but tends to fight each other because they don't like their beholders.
So if you... that's one of the things I've known from you telling me is that beholders don't like each other, and they will almost certainly fight if they see each other.
Well, because they see themselves as the center of the universe. They're the most perfect, beautiful creature to ever exist. This other beholder that has an extra green spot on its side is just revolting because it's ruined its beauty.
Yeah.
At least in their eyes.
These guys aren't pretty. Now, maybe that's just my tiny human brain.
Yeah, what the hell, man?
Imperfect, non-center of the universe human brain thinking that. But they're not pretty, Ryan.
I think they're kind of cool.
Large teeth that need to be brushed and maybe some You know what? No.
They probably don't brush,
This is me setting my human society standards. I need to look through a different lens. So the thing that makes me curious here
is
what if you got a beholder that could lucid dream. Now, I know they don't want to make more beholders because they'll be imperfect.
Right.
But if you got one that was self-aware enough to take over the world by lucid dreaming and just creating beholders,
well, okay.
that's what I'm thinking here.
No, you're thinking along an actual path that some beholders do, not on purpose, but they are called beholder hives. Is what these tend to be. Yeah. Okay. So
that's okay. Considering that they don't like each other, that sounds backwards.
Right. So this happens very, very rarely, and there's also another variation where a beholder is called an eye tyrant, and they kind of subject other beholders to them. But the beholder hive specifically happens whenever a beholder experiences a dream in which, and this is very specific. This is why it's so rare. A beholder has a dream in which there's a mirror or a reflection or something where it can see itself, possibly multiple copies of itself, and it births out a group of quote-unquote newborns, as Volos likes to mention, that are identical to its own shape but smaller. And they use these new babies to, dominate areas. It can consist of 3 to 10. They get birthed out.
So this is very similar to Dragon's Dogma. There are singular eyeball entities, very small ones, just like an eyeball with an eyelid that goes all the way around that I assume it controls. So this is very familiar to me, but I don't understand. I guess it depends on the variation in a beholder and how the writing of them changes, because do these little babies end up growing up and going against the main beholder?
Probably.
Do we have that information?
Probably if it lives long enough. It doesn't, because they don't really have a hive intelligence. It's not like they're all. It's not like a elder brain of the old mind flayer dudes that are controlling these people.
And I want to avoid jumping around here.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking over on the wiki right now.
Oh, no.
There's a lot of sub-races here.
There are. We're not going to get into all of them. We're just going to I'm going to try to stick to the ones that are in the 5e books.
All right. I'm on the Ryan Beholder train now. I am sitting, pulling, boom. There, okay. We're good to go. I don't like roller coasters, but I'm along for the ride.
Yeah, strap in, boys. We're going on for a ride here. So they started off pretty small, the beholders. They're originally just these big, scary eye creatures, and they got expanded a lot in the book called the Eye Tyrant. Different than the Eye Tyrant I mentioned earlier. This is eye with an eye, like I am the best in the world. Eye Tyrant was released in 1996, and this was basically, they had this whole thing, I believe, for the second edition books called Monstrous Arcana, and they have various books. I know there's one on the Mind Flayers, the Sahuagin, and other stuff where it basically just dives into. It's like a whole book dedicated to a certain creature. It's like Volo's Guide, but bigger. And it's a 100-page book just all about beholders, and it really goes into detail. It has a whole description of what a typical beholder day is like. I mean, this. If you like beholders, this is the book you need to pick up right now.
Man, I'm going down a rabbit hole. I said I was going to stay strapped in.
Careful,
without poking my arms out. This is not good. Not good. Yeah. Reel it back, please, man. I'm going down like a gouger and then clicking in that and going down and seeing what those came from. But no, I'm going to stay quiet.
Yeah, so you can get you can get insane with these guys because they are literally, from the realm of insanity, the far realm.
I just want to make a campaign where literally everybody's a beholder.
That would probably not last very long because each beholder that they see, it either, turns into an all-out war or they get scared and run off from each other.
So this is just where D&D Battle Royale comes in.
Yeah, could be.
Everyone's a beholder.
I mean, so how do you roleplay one of these guys, right? We kind of talked about where they came from. Roleplaying these is a little tough because they're kind of fun too. I would think. I haven't gotten to do it quite yet, but they're hate-filled.
Stop mentioning that.
I
want to do it.
Yeah, they're hate-filled creatures, very egotistical, very self-centered. Love to hear themselves speak. I would, if DMs, if you put these creatures in your game, have a insane monologue with crazy amounts of bullet points that the Beholder can just rattle on and on and on and on about. Because this thing, I mean, this is, if you've seen The Incredibles, this is one of the guys that loves to monologue. They're also very paranoid.
What? Beholder's minds were divided into two separate entities.
He's getting lost.
What is this?
He's getting lost in the wiki.
Well, okay, you've got me interested because they're from the Far Realms. I know. I've always been interested in these guys. But I see things like aberration, and they can speak both deep speech, undercommon, and apparently there's a freaking Beholder language.
Not in 5e.
Okay, good. Yeah, these guys have been in the first edition and each subsequent edition after that. So they got some history. Yeah, I'm just going to take my hand off my mouse. We're going to sit back and go. Don't worry.
So like I mentioned, they are very paranoid because to them, there's no such thing as a coincidence, right? If a rock were to fall in their cavern where they live in their lair, then it must be because there's an invisible adventurer that's attempting to sneak up upon it. So they must move their lair, use one of their eye stalks to carve out a new lair, set up a million traps, find a location away from everything, and prepare a new area for them to live in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun too. So I'm kind of jumping ahead to combat here, but this, to me, a Beholder is a fun way to kind of metagame as a DM because whatever the players are doing, the Beholder has already considered the situation and has an answer, no matter what. They have thought of, these are the definition of anxiety-prone people. They have thought every single situation out and have an answer for it. So you as the DM can think ahead. Okay, the player's going to do this. Maybe I'll change, I know what the player's going to do. I'm going to change what I'm going to do. I'm going to just change on the fly, have crazy stuff happen because the Beholder's ready for it. These guys can have a
hold on. Let's chat about that. There's a fine line between metagaming and being prepared and flexible.
Yeah.
So you have to let it react first because I don't think it's psychic.
No, it's not psychic, but if it could happen, if a T-Rex will run through the cavern and where it's living into its lair, it has thought about that. Even if T-Rexes don't even exist in this goddamn world, this Beholder is ready for a T-Rex.
I don't know if this guy has enough time to think about all these things.
Oh, he does. He's got all the time in the world. He's doing nothing all day. Once this guy carves out his lair, once he carves, he kind of is. This is a guy who has no job. He carves out his lair, just makes a spot for his artwork, sets it up, makes a spot for his, traps for his minions if he's got them, puts out a little area above his artwork, and just sits there dreaming all day.
He's doing fine for himself. He doesn't have the man beating down his back, and if the man comes, he's ready.
Yeah, if the man comes, he just shoots him with one of his eye ray and kills it.
Now, I was also scrolling in before the podcast. My hands are off the keyboard now, but before the podcast, I did read that these guys are pretty weak.
What? I don't know where you read that.
Shed some light.
So, yeah, we haven't done the stat block. Let's do that real fast before we go into combat, into a little more role-playing on these guys. So the stat block for just the base Beholder on page 28 of the Monster Manual of the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. Nice. They are a large aberration, lawful evil, 18 armor class, 180 hit points. Some, they got stats, whatever, who cares? They can fly. They only move 20 feet, though. That's important to keep in mind. 20 feet around, that's it. They have some saving throw stuff. They can't go prone because they're flyer boys. Dark vision, 120 feet. Passive perception, 22. Tough to sneak up on these guys. Makes sense. They got a lot of eyeballs.
They do.
They speak deep speech and undercommon. And WotC, Wizard of the Coast, says they are a 13 challenge rating.
So, these... I'm not seeing the 13 challenge rating, and I know you don't subscribe to
We haven't even mentioned the stuff they do yet.
Yeah, you just 180 health points. You just beat them up a little bit, you're dead.
Right.
They're dead.
But, so, they do have an anti-magic cone with their big boy eye.
Okay, just get a fighter.
Right. Okay, the Beholder flies up.
Ranger.
Okay, the Beholder shoots it with one of his eye rays. All of them.
We'll see. What What if
So,
the ranger
okay,
dodges? Okay, yeah.
the beholder fights. If the beholder is fighting in its lair, it will get 7 actions around.
I'm sorry, what?
It will have 7 shots with their eye ray around.
And the chances of encountering this not in its lair very slim.
Yeah,
okay.
very, very rare. That's where these, and think if they do have minions. Though if they do have minions, they will be cannon fodder because this thing wants to subjugate weak-minded individuals so much so that they cast their charm eye ray on it every single day. So much so that eventually they don't even have to do it anymore because it's just lost the will to do anything but serve this creature.
So the image I'm currently looking at, all these eyes have different colors, and you've mentioned several different abilities. Is this not just a simple scorching ray? These guys can do different things. No, you want to run through them real fast? You know what? Let's do it.
Well, I'm not going to dive into exactly what they do, but the name kind of gives it away, right? So they can bite with the big biter if they so wish to. Fun. But I don't know why you would. It only does 46 damage. Don't touch that one. So the eye rays can shoot anything within 120 feet of it. And they're random. So there's 10 of them. You roll a d10, whatever pops up, that's what you do, and then you can aim it at somebody. There's the charm ray, the paralyzing ray, the fear ray, the slowing ray, the innervation ray, which is just a big 88 damage, telekinetic ray, sleep ray, petrification ray, disintegration ray, that's 10d8 damage, and the death ray, which is 10d10 damage. And the target dies if it hits 0 hit points.
So, okay, it gets 7 turns.
7 actions.
Right? 7 actions. And each of these are for the eye stalks?
Each of these will be, for the eye stalk, yeah.
So, if
you roll d10 every time.
If there's 10, and it can do this 7 times, it will go through almost all of these, odds are, each time.
At least once during a combat, I'm sure it will hit everything. So your idea of the ranger and the barbarian dude, you'd say you charm the barbarian to go then attack the, or at least just stay out of the combat, whatever. Paralyzes the ranger, and then just keeps the anti-magic cone on the rest of the dudes. Boom.
But see, these are random, though.
Yes, they are random. But you do know once you roll the d10 and then you decide who it's going at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. But
there are ways
that makes more sense.
There are ways I'm sure you can combat these guys, but they are definitely some big bad stuff.
Yeah, so what talking about where these guys come into play in a campaign would be my next question for you, but it seems like you kind of have to purposefully seek it out. How do these guys affect the world around them? I know they can think and change things, but if there's one for some reason near a town or an area, how do you know it's there? Because I want my party or me or somebody to get involved with these things. So I want to know how.
You really would have to go follow the rabbit hole literally all the way down. Because if this thing, let's say it lives near a village and is starting to try to control the guys, it's not going to be living in the village. It'll probably live way underneath it at the very least. And so you would have to kind of go from step 1. Okay, these guys are acting weird. Why are they acting weird? Okay, there's a weird hole or behind underneath the
now I know where
the governor's house.
The beholder is.
Okay, let's go down underneath the governor's house. Okay, this goes down into the Underdark. This is weird. Okay, this is now a really confusing maze. And eventually, once you get through this confusing maze, you have found the beholder. Like you said, they do tend to kind of come out of nowhere because you're not really expecting a beholder just to be here. Unless you
it's not like a
have figured it out.
They've got effects on the environment around them because of their influence.
They do have regional effects, though.
Do tell.
Yeah, so this is specifically, again, just the beholder. Just the Mac Daddy, regular old beholder. Creatures within 1 mile of the beholder's lair sometimes feels like they're being watched when they aren't. When the beholder sleeps, there are minor warps in reality that occur within 1 mile of its lair and then vanish 24 hours later, such as marks on the cave walls, changing subtly an eerie trinket appearing where none existed before, slime coating a statue that was not there previously. Whatever the beholder is dreaming about would start affecting the environment.
I need to keep these in mind.
Yeah,
Because
so try to be on the lookout.
no, if your DM is anything like my DM, and my DM is Ryan, and we all know that he likes to make a living world, he's gonna have this beholder's effect going on wherever you're at.
But if you're
oh,
that's weird. Did we say the same thing?
go ahead. We'll find out.
I was just gonna say, but if you're within a mile already, you're probably already headed to this thing, you know?
That's true.
Because
That's very true.
the way it makes its layers are so confusing, so long and annoying, because it wants to dissuade people from continuing to go all the way into this thing. They just kind of use their disintegration ray to carve out their layer and just kind of go to town until they find something they like.
You want to know who seems best equipped to fight and go through a layer of the beholder and eventually face it?
John Wick.
Him too. Okay, who's the second best? Think classes in D&D.
Think classes and Warlock.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Short rest, baby! Don't matter.
That's true, but you do have magic.
Well, I have magic, but I've also, if you're a Hexblade, got a magic weapon.
Yeah, but how do you get to it?
Walk up and stab it.
It flies up.
I can also fly.
It looks at you.
I will also think about that and get back to you in the next podcast. There's a
Sounds
way.
good. Yeah.
These have died before.
So it's interesting. The way beholders, it's confusing. So according to some of the research and some of the lore, beholders can accordingly only be killed by another beholder. But it is said that adventurers can kill them because, as you kind of mentioned previously, their brains have been segmented. So one of the there's like two brains in one. So there's another beholder that's already fighting it from the inside. And so you kind of kill it at the same time as the other beholder kills it. It's really weird and confusing.
What?
Right.
Okay, can we go into that a bit more?
There's really not much more. I mean, so yeah, there's two brains.
Why is there two brains in there?
Because it's so paranoid, it's constantly fighting itself because it's so afraid of everyone else. It's very it's very xenophobic. Basically, so a beholder either wants to, there's three things the beholder wants to do: collect everything they see, kill everything they see, or subjugate it to its will. There's really no other things besides dreaming, like sleeping.
There's a lot of funny comparisons to personalities and people that you can make.
Exactly. Yeah, this is just a guy that's down on his luck and got nothing else to do but just play video games, but doesn't have his video game system anymore, so he's just sitting around doing nothing.
So I can't help but notice the severe irony that there is, being that these guys are xenophobic and consider themselves to be the penultimate being, but also are so suspicious of everything that they're suspicious of themselves.
Yeah. Well, because they think, because they're so perfect, that obviously is everyone out to get them is jealous because, you know, who wouldn't be jealous of this beautiful, magnificent bastard?
Not me, he's ugly.
Jesus, dude.
No, thank you. And next, swipe left. I don't know, man. So they're cool as hell. It scares me.
Before we get into the news, I want to quickly dissect the combat, and then we'll afterwards we'll talk about the beholder kin because those guys are cute.
Yeah, I want to know about those guys.
So you, Braxton,
me.
Let's say you're walking down a cavern. Yeah, you do tend to walk, and boom, there's a beholder that you see at the same time. It's currently 120 feet. No, let's say it's 150 feet. So I have to move. No, 130. So it's just out of range. It'd have to move to attack you. You're currently out of its range. Boom. What do you do? Initiative has rolled. You go first.
I move. Okay, so it's if I know that it's slow, I'm gonna move back far. This is metagaming. No. That's far enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna move back far enough to where I couldn't get into its range, and then figure out what ranged abilities I have to hit it.
Exactly.
Oh, fuck that.
That's not a bad idea.
It's magic.
Hypothetically speaking,
first,
what you and your party members could do is just keep moving back every round and attacking it from a distance. Of course, so you would have to have that range, but that's definitely an option.
Eldritch Blast.
See? Or
wait, would it hurt it?
Why not?
It's not innately resistant to magic. It can just nullify it if it's got you in its gaze.
Yes, 150-foot cone. So if you're out of that 150-foot cone or behind it, now not where the eye is looking currently, then you can use your magic.
Well, if it's on you, then I just surround it.
Sure.
Like if there's no choice, because odds are he's gonna back you into a wall. There's no way he can't.
Yeah,
get you somewhere. He's considered this.
Screwed up in the wall, and you got a problem.
He knows his weakness.
Oh yeah. If you could get a beholder to leave its lair, that's another good thing.
How though?
Right.
Like, what feasibly? What is there a way? Like, have you thought of a way?
I mean, you could force it to find a new lair by making it so, paranoid and afraid that there's something happening in its current lair that it has no other choice but to find another place.
What is this thing's charisma stat block?
It's +3, 17. It's not the most. It's kind of charismatic, but not the most.
Would there be a way to convince it to destroy its own lair?
I mean, if you can convince this thing to have a conversation with you, sure, why not?
All right. Okay. All right. You said this guy loves to talk, so maybe he would. We'll see.
Does.
I'm figuring it out, though.
And bring a paladin with you, too. There's lots of saves. Each of those rays I mentioned, that's a DC save.
Yeah, I'd probably die to this guy. Glad I didn't face it. Wait, hold on. Sane beholders were no. What? Sane beholders were beholders whose minds were not divided, so to speak. There were still two entities within the beholders, but neither hid anything from the other, making a less paranoid beholder. What?
You're getting lost in the rabbit hole again.
I'm so confused, man. Let's get to the news so I'm not confused.
You know what time it is?
It is news time.
Da-da-da-da-da!
See, you were you lost breath there because you used your energy. Your cooldown was still going.
I used it earlier. That's my fault.
You know what? I could take the credit this time, but you sent me the news before I could even mention the news.
Sorry, because I was excited this time.
You were excited, but which one were you more excited for?
The possibilities of the second one, and
okay,
I'm excited for both, really.
Okay, well, let's go in order, the ones that you submitted them to me, because honestly, I couldn't find much other news. We did have the D&D live thing that went on, and some of this happened, but I think the first one was announced during that. Is it correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. So for this is the thing that came out with Diversity in Dungeons and Dragons. This is one that Ryan sent me first this week, and in light of everything that's been going on, a lot of companies have been trying to reevaluate their content, seeing if they have been fair to any person. And a big thing in D&D is that races have ability stats.
Yeah.
A tiefling has more charisma, etc., and you could nitpick around here. And
that's got bigger strength,
Yeah, and that pigeonholes you a bit. And this has been prevalent in a lot of video games, but what they're going to improve to start off is removing those racial abilities. Now, if you want to have a background and let that influence what your ability score improvements are, that's how you'll be able to do it. But any race can have any stat improvement. So they're starting with that, but there's a whole bunch of bullet points here. If you go on Dungeons & Dragons or Wizards of the Coast and you go to their news, it's their article, Diversity in Dungeons & Dragons. It was posted on the 17th of this month of June. Basically, throughout the 50-year history of D&D, they say in this article, going forward, that some people in the game, orcs, blah, 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 have been characterized as monstrous, evil, etc. They want to alter that, be less prejudiced or less stereotypic. And they're also going to be taking, and this is what Ryan, I think, is probably excited about, current things like Curse of Strahd, which depicts certain people in a certain light. And
it's a straight-up stereotype.
It's just a straight-up stereotype of them. They're going to be reprinting certain books, including Curse of Strahd, and I'm not sure if there's anything else, Ryan.
Yeah, they're also going to be doing Tomb of Annihilation because of the Chultans.
Yeah, so they're reprinting them and removing the racially insensitive material, which you could take a look at certain other companies that are doing this right now, and a lot of it's knee-jerky just to do their part, but I think they really, really went back, read through the material, or took community feedback and decided to really think about it and alter it in a meaningful way that doesn't detract from the experience, only enhances it or makes it at least a bit better. That's what we're hoping for. They're also proactively seeking new diverse talent to join their staff. So if you're interested to join the pool of freelancers and writers and artists, take a look on that for books coming out in 2021. So that's really cool. I'm glad they made a really nice, well thought out article for this. I felt like they touched on some great things. I feel as though the way Magic the Gathering, which is also Wizard of the Coast, was doing stuff wasn't as great, because they decided to remove some cards, but if you're removing some, you got to remove all.
Yeah,
in my opinion. And they're
it's cool. They hired Romani consultants specifically to write the Visitani better.
Yeah, so Visitani were those people that are the Romani people with that stereotype, and they wanted to change it as well.
Yeah.
And this is something that I've experienced as well, because Ryan had these people in our campaign that we did. Right. It was based off of Strahd. We didn't get to interact with them too much, but it's interesting to see content that I've experienced directly and see what they say, hey, we want to change it.
I definitely tweaked it a little bit. That's for sure. Not just because of, if it was offensive or anything, but because it just didn't really fit the vibe of the game we were having.
Yeah, and since D&D is so old, there's a lot of room for going back in retrospect.
Definitely.
And seeing how it's affected stuff. So that's the first bit of news here. I don't know if Ryan had anything else.
Yeah, there's more. Yeah, so they kind of hint on it in that article that there's going to be that they have an unannounced product being released this year, late in 2020, that will have new rules that are not tied to race. Which leads me to think that possibly this will be a
Player's Handbook 2.
Possibly, yeah, a amalgamation of that as well as the subclasses they've been creating and everything from Unearthed Arcana into kind of a Xanathar's Guide. Yeah, Xanathar's Guide to Everything Part 2, Player's Handbook 2, whatever, something along those lines. That's what I'm hoping for. I think that'd be really cool.
It would be really cool. I want all of this Unearthed Arcana crap to be put together, bound in leather. Probably.
I mentioned to Braxton before the podcast that Pathfinder, I think 2, I don't know if 1 does this, but already has this kind of built in where backgrounds are more important than the race that you pick.
Yeah, I'm surprised by how little backgrounds really affect your character, because more often than not, you pick it and then you make your character's own information. A lot of players throw the background in there and then they decide something later, so it's never really relevant.
I mean, how often have you used your background feature?
I mention it every now and again, but it's never really something I use.
Hardly ever brought up for anybody.
Yeah, for my character specifically, it's Sage, and he's able to pick, or he's able to know frequently where to get information or where to find information.
Yeah.
And it hasn't come up because, I mean, it's cool, Billy, but it's like not, you could do better. It's something I would like to see improved is backgrounds.
Yeah, the last thing from that article that I find interesting is it mentions that there are 2 upcoming and unannounced books that feature the Visitani in some way, which means possibly Ravenloft themed books, because I don't know where else Visitani are in. I don't know. Not the biggest Visitani guy. Either way, that's a lot of new books. I'm excited.
A lot of new books. I mean, the next piece of news here is literally another new book.
What? Another book?
I mean, feel free to take this one away, Ryan, because I kind of talked through this one for the most part.
Okay, so this was our news from last week. We were presuming what the next, I think it was last week, maybe a week before that. Either way, we presumed, there's rumors about the next book being announced, and this was announced during the D&D Live event. Their new campaign, Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden, for levels 1 through 12.
It's got a creepy owl.
Yeah, it looks very, very cool. I'm excited to dive. It says there's a dark terror that revisits the forlorn, flickering candlelights of civilization known as Tin Towns and sheds light on the many bone-chilling locations that surround these frontier settlements. Sounds awesome.
Oh, man. If you're interested in running holistic, created campaigns or modules that exist, check out our last episode. We do our best to cover modules and how to use them and what they are.
Nice segue.
But oh yeah, man, you gotta get people. For this, it's kind of drawing me to wanting to use it, to be honest.
Really? This one specifically?
Well, just that description you read, just in this moment, I'm just like, I love creepy stuff. It sounds like of course, it's going to be extremely well thought out, or at least have some depth. Whether the content is meaningful or not, we'll find out. But the biggest decider is going to be how long is it?
Sure, like I said,
and from what levels?
1 through 12. So if you're dropping this, if you're dropping this into your game, then obviously, like for Curse of Strahd, it's built for kind of the levels that you guys were at, the stuff that I at least kept. Let's say you're dropping into your campaign, the players are already like levels 8 or 5 or something. You could obviously tweak up higher or change stuff. Either how I would use this is obviously add it into my game. If you're just doing the adventure module, then I mean after you finish it, it's over. That's it. You guys say you wrap up the campaign, it's all done.
All right. I'd love to keep going though.
Yeah.
If possible. It just depends on how great the ending is, and it feels really encapsulated.
They usually are pretty good. Like, Curse of Strahd, spoiler alert, you kill Strahd, ideally. That's how the book ends. And it kind of ends on this
railroady much.
high happy note. But if Braxton remembers the way we did in our game, obviously since it's part of a grander story, it continued and you guys got to continue with the NPCs and keep chatting with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Strahd's effects still creep into our world to this day.
Spooky.
Spooky. But yeah, there's a new book coming out, so that's really exciting. There's probably more news that I missed.
And just Baldur's Gate. We talked about it earlier a little bit.
Oh! So, Baldur's Gate, let me tell you.
Okay, tell me.
We were talking about this before. So, what I think it's going to offer to the world, not that everything has to offer something to the world, but this game, the Baldur's Gate is going to be great. It's going to be essentially, Icewind Dale. It's going to be a module or a campaign.
Mm-hmm.
If they do what they did with Divinity Original Sin, making a Dungeon Master mode and really make it robust, I think, like I said earlier before the podcast started, Ryan, this is going to be the first true video game to D&D, vice versa experience that you can have. It's going to be, I know they're not making one-to-one rules, but if there's a bunch of assets, if there's a modding community, I think this is going to turn into another Skyrim where you can mod it to hell. You
wouldn't even have to run the game in it. Just use it as a diagram to show this is where things look like, this is where they are. It's just could be an easier way to show things to your players, even if you're not running combat in it.
Yeah, always feel free to grab certain bits and pieces out of stuff. I mean, even I use different softwares for creating maps, etc., and putting them together. Yeah, if you wanted to have your players move around and walk and visualize things through there, definitely.
Yeah. I hope they make it super easy as well as rewarding if you spend time with it to get into.
What I love about video games is it's easier to leave something alone. Because when your DM in a mind theater game makes you do a perception check, odds are there's something there to find unless you have a creative DM that just does it all the time. But when you fail a check in a video game, you fail that check.
Yeah.
It's done. The mechanics will not let you keep going. So I enjoy that decisive nature of video games.
You broke your lockpick inside the lock, and now you got to find another way through.
Versus, at your friend's house, it's like, I just jammed the lockpick in there a bit more, and maybe they give you a really creative answer and they can do it again. But they'll keep trying, like I will. So I think that's what it's going to offer. I don't think they've mentioned anything on a jam mode or something like that, but I really hope they do.
I just want to do a quick maybe soapbox moment. I want to yell about lockpicking in D&D. Like we've talked about this before, the 10-minute rule. If you spend 10 minutes on anything, you can probably get it done. If you spend 10 minutes searching around a room, you're going to find everything that's inside of it. Unless there is a imminent danger to the party and they're trying to lockpick, you don't really need to have them roll that often. If they are pretty good at lockpicking, just say they spend time on it and they can get it,
Okay, so you're on the other side. I thought you were going to say, you can't pick every lock.
You can't. If you're trying to pick into the royals' quarters, maybe it's a little tougher. But if it's a standard lock, you don't need to make them roll for everything.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and it's very similar to tutorials in video games. Sorry for bringing it back there again, but things are slow, and every new experience you have, you live in it for a bit longer. But as they become normal and every day, you blow through that mechanic. There's no longer a window that pops up. Yeah. In D&D, what Ryan mentioned now, that's the form and the function of that taking place in a tabletop RPG environment. So that's cool. I definitely agree with your perspective there. Not that it's correct or incorrect to think one way or the other, but definitely my preferred way to play. But we got a few minutes. That's it for news. We got a few minutes. I want to learn about other types of beholders because the main beholder, he's cookie cutter, but I was looking through that and I was going down some rabbit holes and I want to learn.
So the beholderkin are what the beholders can birth out, can dream into existence. And we're only going to talk about the ones, like I said, that are in the 5e Monster Manual and Volo's Guide to Monsters. Okay, that's it, because we could be here all day. We're going to start with the Spectator. Spectator, if by whatever reason, Braxton, you are able to obtain 4 of these Beholder Eye Stalks. I don't know how you did it. Maybe you bartered with some guy, and that guy was much more badass than you, went out and killed a Beholder. Whatever. You have 4 Beholder Eye Stalks. You perform a ritual, and then out of the far realm, some other plane of existence, a Spectator comes into being. And these guys are green, scaly kind of creatures that look like a Beholder, but only have 4, makes sense. It's 4 eye stalks. You use them as a guardian to watch over treasures, locations, stuff like this, and they only stay there for, I say only, they're there for 101 years. Once that time is up, boom, they're free to do whatever the hell they want.
So, are they? Can we assume they're similar to basic Beholders? Once they're free, they will go do their own thing and be suspicious of everything.
Yes, more or less. I mean, they tend to spend time where they were because that's what they know. They also do have weird quirks like the Beholders because mainly because they spend so much time by themselves. They tend to have weird, odd quirks, such as talking to itself in the third person, or adopting the voice of its summoner, or creating imaginary enemies and attacking things that aren't actually there, just because it's bored and lost its mind.
These guys, you know what?
Kind of cute.
You know what? They're lawful neutral, and I think that encapsulates it, and they're challenge rating 3, so they're weaker, but these guys seem kind of nice. They're free-thinking spectators, wander the plains at will, openly, cautiously, chatting with those they come across. Think about philosophy, quoting the wiki fandom Forgotten Realms thing. Kind of cute. I like these guys.
Yeah, so those are kind of the tame version of a Beholder. Then you got...
They don't look tame.
No, they don't look tame, but they're kind of cute, right?
Yeah.
Then you got the Death Kiss. And this guy, if you look at his picture, looks super cute, man. Look at the picture. It looks kind of like it's bashful. Really like, oh, you're looking at me? Oh, I'm going to look away. Ha. But these guys are birthed out of, a very specific dream. The Beholder is having a dream where it has lost a lot of its blood. So, naturally, as one would do, it births out a Death Kiss. And this type of Beholderkin, is obsessed with blood. They're constantly searching out blood, sucking it, messing with it. They will drain the blood out of creatures around them. They don't have eye stalks like the others, but they are focused mainly on hunting. They don't really have the other aspects of the Beholder.
Oh man, this is so cool. I love stuff like this. That would freak me the hell out, dude.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's powerful too.
Like, who comes up? Is he?
Yeah, it's challenge rating 10.
Who comes up with these guys, dude? I guess typically you could say, what kind of dream did this Beholder have? And then use that as your template to make something. But
yeah, you literally say
these guys are so sadistic, enjoying preying on their enemies. So do they have a lair or do they just roam around?
Nope, they're roaming and hunting.
That's terribly frightening.
Yeah.
All right. Who's next on the list?
The next we got is the Gazer. These guys are...
I've heard about that.
Really? Okay, so these guys are really weird looking. They're really pulsy and nasty looking. They are born out of when a Beholder is kind of, I don't know, it's looking at itself. I don't know, it's hard to describe. So basically what it says is it resembles the Beholder who dreamed it into existence. But it's much, much smaller. It looks very similar to the other Beholder. It only has 4 of the eye stalks, and it follows its creator, and it's similar to the Beholder Hive that we mentioned previously. Except this just has 1, and it's a half a challenge rating. Very small little dude.
Wait, what?
They're just hanging out, following this Beholder, helping him out, kissing up to him, finding vermin to kill, so it's a clean lair. Kind of like janitors for this guy, more or less.
So, you want to know where I've heard of Gazers?
Where?
In Dragon's Dogma, there are typically bigger versions or scarier versions of enemies at a certain point in the game. Now, in the DLC, there is a massive, probably like 10 to 20 times size of a normal beholder, which is probably like a giant. Like this is a colossal being.
Yeah.
So this is the exact opposite of what you just described. Their eyes in their mouth.
Ugh.
It opens. It's so cool looking. That's where I've heard this is the exact opposite of this guy.
The beholder will put up with the gazer just because they find it cute. That's about it.
It's definitely not cute, but let's continue.
Yeah, so the last little kind of baby beholder is what's known as a goth. And this is not the phase you went through in high school.
I was going to go there, but...
Sorry.
Oh, that guy's disgusting.
Yeah, so this is when a beholder had kind of a dream about greed. It's wanting to find something. It wants to keep something. Maybe it's artwork. And it bursts out this little goth guy. And this guy is obsessed with greed. Wanting to go out and find a certain little... Oh, you know what? I'm confused.
Are you?
I'm gonna back up. I'm gonna backpedal a tiny little bit.
About?
No. So the goth is when a spectator ritual goes wrong. This is why. Yeah, that's why they're very greedy, because they're centered around finding an item. Protecting it as the spectator. But the procedure went wrong in some way, and so the goth comes out instead. And imagine the surprise on the poor mage's face whenever this goth appears and eats them and decides to go.
Also says that these guys lack the extreme xenophobia of beholders, so they might form into clusters, which is also terrible.
Yeah, because they're just focused on the greed aspect.
All right. Was that the last one you wanted to focus on?
No. I want to correct myself with the gazer as well. They're born out of a beholder's fever dream when it's sick. That's why those nasty guys come out.
Why would they like him? They're like their boogers sitting around following him.
They kind of look like a booger, don't they?
They look like little boogers, don't they?
So
There's so many different things. Like, okay, yeah, go ahead.
This is the last beholder again, and my personal favorite.
Oh, I know what you're doing.
Yeah. The Death Tyrant. This is when the beholder, and this guy looks like a skull, floating skull, and there's no eye stalks. There's just little kind of red eyes floating around it. This is when a beholder has a dream where it begins to consider its own mortality. And thinking of kind of a place where death doesn't exist. And this is a very philosophical dream that this beholder has. It literally wills itself to become a lich and sheds its skin, and the Death Tyrant is born. So it's like a beholder and a lich combined in one. They're obsessed with immortality. They are basically almost like necromancers, where they can, if a creature dies in front of it, they can immediately summon it back up as a skeleton. These guys are nasty. If a beholder was bad, this guy's like 10 times worse.
There's apparently a ritual to create death tyrants.
Oh, cute.
Don't like that. No, thank you. Beholder, mages, and elder orbs. It costs around 3,000 gold points. Death tyrants were capable of being magically bound to items by wizards.
Interesting.
Damn. So basically, beholders are really cool, and there's not just one type. There's all sorts of eyeballs out there, like green ones, blue ones, gross, stalky ones with eyes coming out of it, or maybe just
whatever floats your fancy that day. This is what.
Well, they are floating, so they're gonna have your fancy, whether you like it or not, Ryan. But I think we've encapsulated. This
More or less.
Been a Dungeon Crawl guide to beholders, Ryan.
That's it. It's a beholder in a nutshell.
Well, I don't know where we go from there. That is the monster.
Like I said, the Mind Flayers are a pretty big monster, too.
That's true. And I think those guys are really common, so we could break a lot of stereotypes there and offer some information. I think with beholders specifically, they're so encapsulated and a fun miscellaneous quest to toss into your world rather than, how do you put this into your campaign and meld it with the story that's out right now? Because I think we usually like to try to give hooks, but for these guys, it's literally just what do they want to protect?
They could be a big bad of a campaign, kind of controlling a city or something. But you're right. There's not too much in-depth stuff. You could probably really go with them.
Yeah. So hopefully, I mean, you got some ideas just by hearing the descriptions that Ryan's provided with research and the wiki bits of information that I had while I scroll through here, as I do, though I don't read, so keep that in mind. Do remember that.
Yeah,
but next time,
read anything
on the Dungeon Crawl, you'll have to wait because I actually have no idea what we're doing.
We didn't know this time. Last time
I think we do. No, this was the second idea we had.
Wait, is next?
We'll figure it out, guys. We have infinite content. It's okay.
Is next week our year anniversary?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, the 30th. That'll be a year from when we first posted.
How cute.
Aw, Ryan and I, back in the day, I was sitting in my bed. I was like, Ryan, hey, Ryan, we should maybe do a podcast. Let's set a time. And that was the day.
Look at us, little babies.
Oh, little babies. We did it. I mean, I've been in Chicago for a year now. We've only missed a certain number of episodes. Don't point at those out. But, everybody gets days off. We'll figure something special out within this week. Hopefully something fun, but probably something unusual.
Yeah, probably something stupid.
If you've been here the whole time or just today, we love you. You're a good one. Go get yourself a snack.
I love you more than Beholder loves itself.
That's scary because
that's a pickup line, man.
Say that to your next. You're gonna pick anybody.
No, you find
might
a lady.
Not be too successful.
You find a lady likes D&D. That's what you say. Hey baby, I love you more than a Beholder loves itself.
You could just say you're the eye of my beholder.
Oh, that's not bad either.
There we go.
It's a little too cliche. A little too cliche.
That's what pickup lines are. Take it, ruminate with it. Oh, don't have gas. That's bad. I don't know if a beholder would have that. But take care, everybody. He's been Ryan.
He's been Braxton.
This is the Dungeon Crawl, and thank you very much for your ears. I'll take them.
We'll see you next week.